By the time the loudspeaker called another delay, my palms were already damp against my boarding pass. Denver International, Terminal C, looked like a snow globe someone forgot to put down. Outside the glass, white gusts erased the runway lights. Inside, bodies pressed shoulder to shoulder, smelling like wet wool and burnt coffee. I had one job: get Lily and me to Seattle for my publisher meeting tomorrow morning. Instead, an airport employee stopped me beside the newsstand and asked me to step aside. Her eyes flicked to my tote bag like it was evidence. I knew that look. It was the same quick scan I got at every checkpoint since I started traveling with a kid and a dream. Secondhand coat, scuffed boots, hair twisted into a tired bun. The kind of tired that telegraphed late shifts and cheap dinners. The woman's smile stayed polite while her body angled to block the aisle, as if I might bolt. She gestured toward a small table near a souvenir rack, and I followed, because mothers do not get to be dramatic. I kept thinking of Lily's sneakers waiting by the window. In my purse, my phone buzzed with an email reminder titled Seattle Pitch, a subject line that felt like a dare. I wrote romance novels in stolen hours, the kind where broken people find a soft place to land. And tomorrow I was supposed to convince someone in a glass office that my words were worth a contract. The employee asked for my ID, then my boarding pass again, then asked about the debit card I used at the kiosk. Her questions circled like seagulls. I answered calmly, but my stomach tightened with each assumption. I told Lily, 5 minutes earlier, to stand by the giant window near gate C16, the one where you could watch planes nose through snow like whales. She had nodded with her serious little face, clutching her stuffed bunny, and I had promised I would be right back. Now I watched the minute hand on the big clock crawl and felt my throat burn. The employee waved over a uniformed security officer. People stared, the way they do when they are glad it is not them. I hated how my voice sounded inside my head. At first it was just a tremor, the kind I could blame on cold air and nerves. Then the tremor turned into a thin sweat under my collarbone. I recognized the pattern like a bad chorus I had heard too many times. Type 1 diabetes does not care about your big moment. I reached for the tube of glucose tablets in my tote, the orange cap worn smooth, but the officer asked me to keep my hands visible while he checked my bag. My vision narrowed, and I tried to smile so nobody would panic. He pulled out my paperback manuscript, the pages clipped and dog-eared, and held it up like contraband. The employee's eyes brightened with the satisfaction of being right about me. I felt anger spark, hot and clean, then immediately swallowed it because anger never helps when you are the one being questioned. In my life, powerful systems have always preferred simple stories. Poor mom equals trouble. I kept repeating the only prayer I trust: just get through this. I did not mention the reason I always keep my documents neat and my mouth careful anyway. The room tilting was subtle, like the terminal floor had become a moving walkway. I tried to focus on details: the scratch on the table, the fluorescent buzz overhead, the smell of cinnamon pretzels drifting from somewhere cruelly normal. My tongue felt thick. I could feel my blood sugar sinking, the way you feel an elevator drop before your stomach catches up. I tried to signal that I needed something sweet, but the officer was still listing procedures, still asking for names, still delaying. I could see Lily by that window, counting without me today. A screen above the concourse flashed, canceled in angry red, and people groaned like one organism. I wanted to join them, to be just another traveler trapped by weather, but I was trapped by suspicion instead. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., a publishing assistant was supposed to slide my pages across a conference table. I had paid for this flight with tips and overnight shifts, telling myself it was an investment, not a gamble. My hands shook harder. The glucose tube sat inches away, and yet it might as well have been locked behind their rules. I tried one last time to organize myself the way I do when life is rough. Breathe in. Count. Breathe out. Picture Lily safe. It worked when rent was late and the fridge was empty, and I still had to smile at customers. It did not work when my blood sugar kept falling and my body stopped listening. The officer's badge swam. The employee's lips moved, but the words arrived muffled, as if I were underwater. I reached for the edge of the table and missed. Panic. Not for me, but for my girl alone. In the split second before everything went dark, I saw Lily's face in my mind the way it had looked when I told her to wait. Brave, trusting, trying so hard to be easy. I wanted to run back to the giant window and scoop her up and tell her that adults do not always keep promises, but I would try anyway. The terminal noise stretched into a long, thin tone. Someone caught my elbow. My knees folded. My last thought was Lily standing by that glass, watching snow, and wondering why I never came. Later, when the hospital lights stopped spinning and my hands could finally hold a cup, I kept seeing the giant window at gate C16. Lily was there because I told her to wait, because I believed I would return in minutes. That belief became her only shelter in that storm. She looked so small in the footage and in the story she later told me. A 5-year-old island in a sea of delayed travelers. Snow slapped the glass in bright sheets. Announcements echoed. Suitcases rattled. Lily hugged Button, her one-eyed bunny, like a seatbelt, and kept her backpack tight too. Her jeans had 2 careful knee patches that never quite matched, and one purple sneaker lace was frayed into a tiny brush. She carried a peanut butter pretzel in a napkin, already half saved, the way kids do when treats are counted and tomorrow matters. She learned to offer anyway, even hungry. That was when she noticed him on the bench by the window, a man in a charcoal coat that looked expensive without trying. He held his phone the way some men hold a weapon, thumb hovering, eyes not on the screen but on the room as if exits were sentences. Lily told me she thought he was lost, not because he looked confused, but because he looked alone in the middle of so many people. I can picture the set of his shoulders, the neat cuffs, the calm that makes others instinctively move aside even before they know his name. She climbed onto the seat beside him like she belonged there, then asked, in her way, whether he was lost too. Before he could answer, she offered the peanut butter pretzel, holding it out with the seriousness of a tiny nurse taking vitals because sitting alone made people forget to eat. What stunned me, when Lily described it, was that he did not wave her off. He made space. He angled his body so she was sheltered from the drafty glass. His face stayed hard, but his attention softened, like a lock turning one notch, and my stomach twisted with relief. Only later did I understand that the kindness came with shadows. Lily noticed first, of course. She felt men watching without staring, positioned near a coffee stand and a charging station, pretending to scroll or sip. One of them, Rafe, kept his shoulders squared to every corridor like trained architecture. When she told me about those watchers, my first emotion was not gratitude. It was fear, the old kind that tastes metallic. I have learned that help from powerful men is never free, and that questions can turn into cages. But Lily saw only protection patterns and she trusted eyes. Ethan introduced himself the way a man does when he is used to controlling the terms, brief and confident, expecting the world to accept it. Lily gave her name back with certainty and explained Button's missing eye like it was a badge. The two of them formed a strange alliance. I imagine his phone was full of messages that mattered to people with sharp suits and sharper tempers. Lily said the screen kept lighting up, and he kept not answering. That detail landed in me later like thunder. A man like that does not ignore urgency unless something shifts inside. Lily also noticed how he sat, not slouched like tired travelers, not sprawled like the bored, but balanced, ready, feet planted, shoulders loose, gaze sliding across doors and cameras and reflections. She told me it felt like he was guarding a secret even while he smiled at her snack offering. Hearing it, I felt 2 opposite pains at once. One was relief that my child had found a safe adult when I vanished. The other was jealousy, because I wanted to be the only one who could calm her. Mothers are not supposed to be replaced by strangers in coats. Lily, in her fearless way, shared pieces of our life without knowing they were sensitive. She explained we were headed to Seattle, that I wrote love stories between shifts, that tomorrow mattered. She said Ethan's jaw tightened at the word meeting, like he understood deadlines the way storms understand airports. In my mind, the terminal light makes everything pale and honest. Snow drifts against the window seams. Lily swings her legs above the floor and hums to Button. She folds the pretzel napkin into a neat square, saving crumbs like currency. Ethan watches her hands with a softness he hates. Then came the detail that makes my skin prickle. Lily pointed out a traveler past the gates, someone whose briefcase looked too light for the way it pulled his shoulder, someone walking like he was trying to seem ordinary. She noticed it the way she notices thunderstorms in my eyes. Lily said. Ethan changed in a blink. The air tightened, and Rafe shifted before any alarm sounded. That was when I understood my daughter wasn't naive, and Ethan wasn't ordinary. Staying with her might expose him. Walking away would abandon her. The choice sat between them like a loaded pause. Lily said the moment she pointed out the man with the wrong weight bag. Ethan's whole body tightened, like someone had snapped a wire inside him. The benches, the glass, the drifting snow became a map. Even his breathing changed, controlled, quiet, counting, and his eyes moved faster than announcements overhead. Later, when I replayed Lily's story, I could see Rafe without seeing him. He was the kind of man who blended into airports by pretending to be bored. He shifted one step, then another watcher mirrored him, closing angles as if the terminal had invisible lines around Ethan and child. Ethan's phone lit up again, pale blue against his glove, and he glanced down with the irritation of a man whose time is measured in windows that slam shut. Lily told me he did not answer. He just watched the crowd like it could bite, and he hated being slowed. I understand now why he flinched at visibility. Airports are cameras and scanners and names on forms, a paper trail that follows you forever. Lily said he kept his chin slightly lowered, as if hiding from lenses. Helping her meant walking straight into documentation, the very thing his life avoided. Lily wasn't crying, not the way I would have been at her age. She held Button by the ear and kept one hand on her backpack strap, steadying herself. She watched Ethan's face, reading it like I read weather. Brave, but braced as if she expected adults to disappear again. She still offered that half peanut butter pretzel, the napkin folded tight, crumbs protected like treasure. That gesture mattered to Ethan, Lily said, because it treated him like a person, not a threat. In a terminal full of suspicion, she chose generosity, and it made his hard eyes soften for seconds. Rafe's posture suggested an exit plan, the kind I only recognize in hindsight. A subtle turn toward a corridor, a hand near his jacket, a pause that waited for Ethan's nod. Ethan could have stood, walked away, and vanished into the storm delays, leaving my daughter to the system alone. If he left, the suspicious traveler might not matter, and his phone could reclaim him. If he stayed, he risked being seen with a child who wasn't his, questioned by staff, recorded by security footage. Every protective instinct fought every habit of secrecy. I can feel that collision in chest. Lily, of course, pushed him where adults wouldn't. She asked him, in her simple way, whether he solved problems for good people or only for whoever paid. I hear her voice in that question, because I've asked it of men before, and I never liked the answers I got either. Ethan didn't pretend to be a hero. Lily said he admitted he helped complicated people, the ones normal rules cannot fix. But she also felt him hesitate, like he was choosing words that would not stain her. That restraint was its own confession. He could scare her, yet he didn't. His screen flashed again, and Lily noticed numbers shrinking, the kind of countdown that means money, loyalty, or danger, depending on your life. Ethan's thumb hovered as if one tap could settle a war. Then he locked the phone, choosing silence over control for the sake of a stranger's child. Lily said he shifted on the bench, making space like an invitation, then stood in one smooth motion that made nearby people unconsciously step back. He offered his hand, palm open, not grabbing. A man used to commands chose a request instead. She took it with Button pressed between wrists. As they started walking, Rafe moved first, not beside them but ahead, clearing a path by simply existing. The other watcher drifted behind, a quiet bookend. No one announced anything. Still, the terminal rearranged around them. As if recognizing authority, Lily stayed close, tiny steps matching his long stride exactly. Hearing this later tore me in half. Part of me wanted to thank him until my throat broke. Part of me wanted to pull Lily back into my arms and never let her trust another adult again. But Lily felt safer in motion than in waiting, and so did he. The information desk sat under bright lights and a glowing sign that promised help and paperwork. Ethan knew it, Lily said. She felt his hesitation as they neared. Cameras watched that counter from 3 angles. Names would be typed. Announcements would echo. There was no quiet exit once he committed. Still, he tightened his grip just enough to reassure, not enough to trap. Lily told me she sensed a promise in that pressure, the kind you make when you decide a child will not be abandoned on your watch. He squared his shoulders and stepped into the light with her. I can picture the snow's reflection sliding across the glass behind them as they left the giant window. The last place I asked Lily to be brave. Ethan walked her toward the counter where questions would start, where his name might be demanded, and where my disappearance would become official. Later, when Lily described the information desk, she made it sound like a lighthouse in a storm, bright, clean, and surrounded by people who all needed saving at once. The sign above it promised help in glowing letters. But the moment Ethan guided her there, the air changed. Cameras hung like quiet insects. A terminal map pulsed on a screen, the line of travelers bent around stanchions, and every few seconds a suitcase wheel clicked over tile like a metronome. Lily kept Button tucked under her arm, the worn fur pressed to her cheek, and she stayed close to Ethan's coat as if his shadow could substitute for mine. Jenna was the agent on duty, and I learned her name the way you learn a nurse's name after a long night, from the paperwork that follows you home. Lily remembered her as tired but steady, hair pinned back, headset snug against one ear. Jenna's hands moved fast, typing, clicking, writing a timestamp, then asking the same questions twice because policy demands precision. Lily didn't understand the rules, only the sound of keys clacking and the sharp, rehearsed calm that adults use when something might turn serious. Jenna's eyes kept flicking from Lily's face to Ethan's wristwatch to the security cameras above them. Lily told me she could feel Jenna measuring the scene the way teachers measure bruises they pretend not to see. A small child, an unrelated man who looked expensive, a storm delay that stretched minutes into hours. Jenna's smile stayed kind, but it had edges, the kind that says I am here to help and also to verify. Ethan didn't fidget. He stood with the quiet authority of someone used to rooms making space for him, yet he kept his shoulders angled so Lily was shielded from the crowd. Rafe lingered a few steps back, pretending to check a departure screen, but his posture broadcasted a warning Ethan didn't need spoken. Jenna's first questions were about Lily, and that's when the trap tightened. Lily had to say who she was, who her mother was, where we were headed, and how long she'd been waiting. Later, Lily admitted she paused for a heartbeat before giving our full names. That tiny hesitation is the whole story of my life. I have taught her, gently but firmly, that names can travel farther than we do, that paperwork can find you, that strangers don't always need your whole truth. But in that moment, with Jenna's pen hovering and Ethan's hand warm on her shoulder, Lily chose cooperation over caution. Then Jenna turned to Ethan, and Lily said she felt the temperature drop even though the lounge heaters blasted hot air. Jenna needed the reporting adult's identity and contact information, a standard requirement that suddenly became dangerous. Ethan's jaw worked once, like he was swallowing an argument. His phone lit again, the same pale blue flash, and he ignored it, eyes locked on Jenna's monitor as if he could will it to forget him. Rafe shifted closer, not touching, but close enough that Ethan could read the message in his presence. Leaving a name here makes a trail. Ethan complied anyway, and that choice matters more to me than any romantic gesture ever could. He gave Jenna a version of himself that could survive daylight, the name Ethan Cross and a corporate front that sounded like security logistics. He slid a business card across the counter with a smooth, practiced motion. Lily remembered how the card didn't bend, thick and clean, like it had never been pulled from a wallet in a hurry. Jenna typed it in without expression, and I can almost hear the keys. Then her headset clicked, and she prepared the public page script that would send my name across Terminal C like a flare. Waiting is where the fear thickened. Jenna stepped away to coordinate, and the counter area filled with the hum of procedure. Printers spitting paper, radios murmuring, a uniformed officer pausing to observe. Lily's bravery started to wobble. She pressed Button's worn fur between her fingers until the stitching whitened. She kept scanning toward the restroom corridor, then back to the window, as if I might appear out of snow like a miracle. Ethan stayed beside her, still as a post, but his eyes kept shifting, calculating the same thing I would have calculated. How long is too long? I hate that I wasn't there. I hate that my absence became a question everyone could see on Lily's face. The longer Jenna didn't return with good news, the more official it felt, as if the airport itself had decided I was not simply late but missing. Lily later told me she noticed Ethan glance at his watch, and then at the security cameras, like he was counting both minutes and consequences. Every second I stayed unseen made it harder for him to walk away, and also more dangerous to stay. That is the cruelty of systems. They demand proof while a body is failing somewhere quiet. The turn came from Lily, not from any adult. She remembered something important, something I had drilled into her in calm moments at our kitchen table. She told Jenna, in her plain way, that my blood sugar can drop fast, that stress makes me shaky and confused, that I sometimes forget my own steps when I'm low. She mentioned the candy I carry and the way I go pale before I admit I'm in trouble. Lily said Jenna's face changed immediately, the kindness sharpening into urgency. The desk became less about forms and more about finding me before my body quit completely. And that's when they started pulling up the cameras now. Everything changed the second Lily mentioned my diabetes. Jenna's professional calm didn't disappear, but it sharpened, like a blade pulled from a sheath. Fingers flew over keys, her headset pressed tighter to her ear, and the bright help sign suddenly felt like an emergency room light. Ethan stopped being a concerned stranger and became stillness with intention, eyes scanning corners, shoulders squared as if he could hold the whole terminal in place. Lily clutched Button's worn fur until the fabric puckered. I wasn't just late. I was a medical problem moving somewhere unseen, and every minute was suddenly a countdown. Jenna pulled a tablet from beneath the counter and angled it so Lily couldn't see too much, but Ethan could. The screen's glow washed their faces, a cold aquarium blue. Camera views flickered. Gate lounges, coffee lines, the corridor by the restrooms, each stamped with sterile time codes. Watching a life through surveillance is humiliating in a different way than being accused. It turns you into a moving dot, a subject, a clip. Rafe drifted closer, pretending to study the departures board, yet his attention never left Ethan's shoulder, as if he could read danger in reflected glass alone, too. Then Jenna froze a frame. There I was, on the screen, in my blue sweater with the frayed cuff I kept meaning to mend, moving like I was walking on a boat deck. One hand trailed along the wall, not for drama, but for balance, for proof the world was still solid. My head dipped, then lifted, as if I were trying to remember what direction meant. I was heading toward the restroom corridor with stubborn purpose, the way I always try to fix myself privately before I ask anyone for help, because needing people has always felt dangerous there. My own memory of that stretch is more sensation than story. I remember fluorescent light buzzing like insects in my skull. I remember the smell of coffee turning sour, and the strange distance between my thoughts and my hands. I knew I was low. I knew candy was in my bag. But I also knew I was being watched and judged, and shame can make you stubborn. The only plan my brain could hold was simple. Get somewhere private. Breathe, swallow sugar, come back, keep my promise to Lily. And the storm outside felt like it was closing in too. On the desk side of the world, Jenna's voice moved through her headset in clipped bursts, calling security, calling medical, asking for restroom checks in Terminal C. She rewound, advanced, confirmed angles, tracking my last clear step like it mattered more than any delayed flight. Ethan leaned in, absorbing the footage, and something cold settled behind his eyes. Lily said he started mapping routes without looking at maps. Rafe's hand made a tiny signal, and another watcher peeled away toward the corridor. Not running, just arriving fast as if the airport were his territory and he had to control it. Lily's courage began to split at the seams. She kept button under her chin and breathed shallow, the way she does when she's trying not to be a bother. She remembered sirens from our old apartment. The night voices got loud, and she learned to stay quiet in a closet with her hands over her ears. She didn't describe it as trauma, because kids don't have those words, but I heard the same survival lesson underneath. When adults panic, you disappear. Ethan felt her tremble and shifted closer, becoming a wall between her and everybody staring while snow spinning outside. I wish I could say I fought harder, that I demanded juice and made noise, but hypoglycemia is a thief. It steals your logic first, then your pride, and you don't notice until you're already bargaining with fog. On the screen, I looked determined, which is almost funny, because I was barely there. Jenna knew the danger window was closing. She marked my path and sent responders the way you send someone after a lost hiker. Ethan watched that clip like it was personal, like my body had become his responsibility too, and Lily stood beside him holding her breath. The update came through Jenna's headset, and even without hearing the words, Lily understood by the way Jenna's shoulders dropped. Medical had found me in a restroom stall. In reports, they used clean terms like unresponsive, but what it meant was that I couldn't answer my own name. Gloves, glucose gel, practiced hands, all the things my body needed when it refused to cooperate. Rafe returned to Ethan's side, eyes sharp, as if daring the world to interfere while strangers tried to save a single mom in a locked bathroom. Hope arrived wearing latex and calm in middle of winter. Lily didn't cry right away, she told me later. She froze, listening for footsteps that wouldn't come. Ethan lifted her, not for show, but to anchor her, bringing her to chest height so she could breathe against something steady. His coat smelled faintly of cedar and cold air. He kept one hand at the back of her head, turning her away from curious strangers. Jenna signaled that I was being treated and would be brought out soon. Somewhere inside my blacked-out mind, I felt the first flicker of returning light and begged God that Lily was not alone anymore there. Sound returned first, like someone turning a radio knob from static to speech. I heard an announcement swell and fade, then the squeak of a cartwheel, then my own breath scraping in and out too fast. Light followed, harsh and white, making the ceiling tiles look endless. The air smelled of sanitizer and melted snow. Something cool pressed my wrist where tape held a line in place, and a gloved hand checked it with practiced care. My tongue tasted sweet and chemical, and my stomach rolled with shame because I knew exactly what had happened. Low blood sugar. Again, I tried to sit up and the world tilted. Not black this time, but soft around the edges, like cotton in my head. I blinked hard, searching for one thing that mattered more than my pride or my meeting or the storm. Lily. I could not remember the last minute, only the urge to hide my weakness. Panic rose as I pictured her alone by the giant window right now. Later I learned they had wheeled me out from the restroom corridor, IV bag swaying, paramedics carving a small bubble through the crowd. In the moment, I only sensed motion and faces blurring past, but my eyes locked on a flash of purple near the information desk. Lily. She was in Ethan's arms, button mashed against his coat, her little shoes dangling as if gravity had forgotten her. Her gaze hit mine, and her brave mask cracked so fast it scared me. She launched forward the second the paramedic slowed, not caring about wires or strangers or the fact that I looked wrong. I tried to speak, to explain, to apologize, but my throat only managed a rough sound. That was enough for her. She pressed her forehead to mine and shook, holding on like she could stitch me back into place with pure force. I felt tears hot on my cheeks, not from pain, but from the terror of almost leaving her story without its mother. Not again today. My hands were clumsy, but I wrapped them around her anyway, feeling the bones of her shoulders through that too thin jacket. The guilt hit harder than the dizziness. I had told her to wait by the giant window like that was a safe plan. Like the world always follows instructions. I could feel her heartbeat racing against my chest, fast little bird beats, and I realized she had been holding herself together for everyone else. For Jenna. For strangers. For the man she'd just met who carried danger in his posture but safety in his hands. Now that she could see me, she finally let go. Her sobs were silent at first, trapped in her throat. Then they spilled out in shaking breaths that made my own lungs stutter. Button dropped between us, and her fingers snatched it back, twisting the worn ear like a lifeline. I kept nodding, promising with my body that I was here, that I wasn't disappearing, even while my mind replayed the stall door closing. Ethan stayed close but not possessive, positioned a step to the side so Lily could cling to me without feeling watched. I noticed him the way you notice a storm shelter, solid, silent, built for impact. His eyes still tracked exits, not in a paranoid way, but in a practiced one, like a man trained to prevent bad endings. When a curious traveler drifted near, Ethan shifted his stance, and the space around us widened, as if people instinctively obeyed his boundaries. The paramedics worked with gentle efficiency, checking my glucose, offering water, watching my hands stop trembling. They explained, through Jenna, that I was stabilizing but still vulnerable, that the safest choice was observation and more time before I made decisions. I hated hearing that. Recovery feels childish, like being told to sit down when all you want is to prove you can stand. Lily kept her arms around my neck, and I let her, because my pride didn't matter. Her warmth steadied me more than any sugar dose. As soon as I could think in full sentences, my brain lunged at Seattle. The publisher meeting was tomorrow morning, the one I'd begged for after years of rejection emails and late-night drafting while Lily slept. Missing it felt like losing our last rope out of survival mode. The paramedics recommended a hospital, and I panicked at the idea of another system, another record, another bill, another delay that would swallow my chance. I tried to insist I was fine, that I just needed food in a minute, but my voice shook, betraying me. Lily tightened her grip like she could keep me upright by will. Ethan watched me with a calm that didn't judge. He didn't argue or crowd me. He offered a middle path through action, a private place nearby, warm, with real food, where I could be monitored without the public spectacle, where Lily could breathe. His certainty felt like a handrail, and I found myself reaching for it. Even then, trust felt risky, but I followed. Leaving the information desk felt like stepping out of a hurricane's eye and into a hallway that someone had padded with velvet. The terminal noise stayed behind the moment Ethan guided us toward a discreet door near a wall, and a brass plaque I would have walked past 100 times. My legs were still watery, my sweater sleeve damp where a medic had wiped gel, and Lily kept one arm wrapped around my waist like she was afraid my body might evaporate again. Behind us, I sensed Rafe hovering in the flow of travelers, holding the chaos at bay. The latch clicked, and the air changed. Warmth replaced the bite of snow that clung to coats, and the lighting softened as if the room had decided to be kind. Leather chairs sat in small islands. A buffet line gleamed with silver tongs, and a window wall showed the runway lights blinking through swirling white. Somewhere a low piano track floated under the hum of espresso machines, not loud enough to demand attention, just enough to make breathing feel normal. Ethan moved like he belonged here, flashing a membership card and steering us toward a corner with sightlines always. Lily slipped from my side the second she saw food, but she didn't rush. She approached the buffet like it was a museum display, eyes wide, hands folded, waiting for someone to tell her she'd misunderstood. She chose a banana, a small yogurt, and a packet of peanut butter crackers, then stopped, as if taking more would be stealing. She lined everything on a low table in neat rows beside Button, smoothing the worn fur on his missing ear. My throat tightened because I knew that careful math. It was how we survived. Take little, stay quiet even when safe. Ethan brought a cup of tea without making a show of it, and I held it with both hands like it was medicine. The warmth crept up my fingers, and slowly the nausea loosened its grip. I ate half a hard-boiled egg and a small handful of nuts, chasing protein the way my doctor begged. The lounge chair swallowed me, and since the security stop, I noticed my shoulders had climbed to my ears. Lily watched me chew like she needed proof I would stay. I hated how close I'd come to snapping her world in two again today. Ethan chose a seat with his back to a wall and the entrance in view, but he angled his body toward Lily so she felt included, not inspected. He set my plate within reach, then slid Lily's napkin closer when it threatened to fall, the kind of caretaking that doesn't ask permission. Through the glass I caught Rafe near the doorway, a silhouette that never fully relaxed. Ethan didn't speak much, yet everything about him suggested he was used to decisions that others followed. In here, his power wasn't loud, just certain, and that certainty made the room feel safer. Once Lily started eating, my mind finally had space to be a person again. I let Ethan see what I usually hide: double shifts, cheap pens, a laptop on the kitchen counter after Lily fell asleep. I explained, gently, that I write romance because I need proof people can choose tenderness on purpose. Stress makes my blood sugar vicious. Humiliation makes it worse, and today had been both. With each bite, my hand steadied, yet I felt exposed, sitting in quiet luxury I hadn't earned, across from a man who looked built from control, and I wasn't what he wanted. Ethan watched Lily the way some people watch fire. Careful, mesmerized, protective of the small warmth. When she lined up crackers, he almost smiled, then caught himself, eyes flicking back to the entrance. I recognized that reflex. It wasn't arrogance. It was a habit built by rooms that didn't stay safe. He carried tiredness under his expensive coat, the kind that comes from guarding too much for too long. For a moment, his gaze softened on Lily's face, like he was counting time, like a child somewhere might be growing without him. Then his jaw set and the mask returned. His phone kept waking up on the table, a pulse of light under his palm. It vibrated once, twice, then again, like a heartbeat he was ignoring. Each time the screen lit, I caught a glimpse of stacked alerts and a clock icon that made my stomach clench. Ethan glanced down, thumb hovering, then locked it without answering. Rafe didn't come in, but I saw him shift outside the glass, as if he felt the ripples too. I knew enough about power to understand silence can cost. Whatever Ethan was postponing wasn't casual, and he chose Lily and me anyway. I sipped tea and watched Lily finally sink into the cushion, cheeks sticky with yogurt, button tucked under her elbow like a seatbelt. The lounge felt unreal, a snow globe of safety, and Ethan was the hand holding it steady. Gratitude rose in me, but so did caution. Men with access to doors like this rarely offer help without a reason, and I didn't have much left to bargain with except pride. Yet Ethan hadn't asked for anything. He just sat there, letting his phone flash and fade, and I wondered what he was sacrificing to keep us safe today. In the lounge, the quiet should have felt like a reward, but Ethan's phone kept pulling the room back toward urgency. Every few minutes, the screen lit in his palm, bright enough to paint his knuckles blue, then went dark again. He never answered. He just watched the door, watched Lily, watched the snow beyond the glass, as if he could hold 3 worlds steady at once. I told myself it was none of my business. My stomach disagreed. I could feel trouble breathing nearby. Gratitude made me want to look away, to let his silence stay untouched, because questions can turn kindness into a transaction. But Lily's little rituals kept reminding me nothing in our life stays free for long. She lined up her crackers beside Button, tapped the foil on her yogurt closed, and saved half a pretzel in her pocket like tomorrow might vanish. I saw my own habits reflected there. Finally, I asked, not with words, but with my face. Ethan noticed, because he notices everything. He glanced down at the stacked notifications, then at Lily, then back at me, and I felt him choose honesty the way he chose seats, with precision. I understood, later, that he had been working a tight window on that phone, something that required confirmation before a clock ran out. The way his thumb hovered told me he was used to decisions that couldn't be undone. His expression didn't ask for sympathy. It offered a fact, and waited for me to survive it right now. When the number landed in my mind, I felt heat flood my neck like a fever. He had missed a confirmation worth $2,800,000. Not delayed it, not renegotiated, missed it, because he stayed with my child when he could have stood up and walked away. I stared at his phone as if the glow might explain the math of a man losing that much without flinching. My teacup trembled against the saucer. I thought about rent, insulin, daycare, and gap between world and mine. In a single breath, I could see what that money could do for Lily. A stable apartment with no mildew, a fridge that wasn't a game, a laptop that didn't overheat, a doctor visit without bargaining. The imagining hurt because it made his choice feel even heavier. People don't pick strangers over numbers like that. Not in my experience. My experience had taught me to be small, to be grateful, to expect the bill later. And yet he sat calm like the loss was settled. My first instinct wasn't relief. It was suspicion, the kind you earn. I searched for the hook. Gratitude turning into obedience, help turning into leverage, safety turning into a debt. My mind tried to build a courtroom out of Ethan's calm face and my own panic. That's what happens when you've been treated like a suspect more than a person. I held my cup until my hands stopped shaking and promised myself one thing. I would not hand him control just because he'd shown mercy. Ethan didn't argue with my fear. He made the money smaller by treating it like a number that could come back. What he couldn't tolerate, I sensed, was a child sitting alone and learning that adults vanish. When he watched Lily, I saw a private ledger of absences behind his eyes. He still scanned exits, but there was something softer under it. A craving to be the kind of man a kid could trust without thinking twice. That hit me harder than any security badge. I felt a crack in my armor, and it scared me. Being chosen is dangerous when you're used to being managed. Part of me wanted to push Lily behind me and thank Ethan from a safe distance. Another part of me wanted to sit in the warmth and believe, just for 1 minute, that a powerful man could help without taking. Lily munched quietly, eyes half-lidded with exhaustion, crumbs on Button's head like confetti. Lily, the smallest person there, shifted the balance between us today. Guilt tried to turn his sacrifice into a debt. I began rehearsing refusal. No favors, no private doors, no help that could be called in later. Part of me wanted to grab Lily and vanish back into the crowd before gratitude hardened into a leash. Ethan stayed calm, like he could see the escape routes in my mind. He didn't press. He simply made it clear he wasn't collecting anything from me. Whatever this was, it wasn't a purchase. Then he mentioned a place, Seattle. Seattle should have been just my destination, but hearing it in that lounge felt like a door unlatching. Ethan looked from Lily to me, and pride rose fast, because pride is sometimes the only thing a single mom owns. My instincts warned that accepting more would be dangerous. His phone lit again, urgent and unanswered, and I understood he was about to offer something real. Something with walls and keys, something that would test whether I could trust him and still keep my freedom intact. Seattle was still a word on the departure board to me, not a promise. My publisher meeting sat in my calendar like a cliff edge, and everything around it was math. Hotel rates, rideshare surges, the cost of missing work, the price of a single bad blood sugar day. In the lounge, Lily finally looked like a kid again, cheeks warming as she ate, while I tried to make my hands stop trembling around a paper cup. I kept thinking about where we would sleep if the storm reshuffled flights again, and whether I could walk into that meeting unbroken. Ethan watched me do those calculations without asking for my numbers. He just noticed the way my eyes kept flicking to my bag, as if my budget lived inside it. Then he shifted, casual but decisive, and I sensed he was about to move something heavy with one hand. He had resources the way other people had pockets. I later understood he offered a corporate apartment in Seattle, one that sat empty most weeks, close enough to downtown to make my meeting possible without scrambling. A place with a real door, a quiet bed, and no front desk questions for us. My first reaction was a hard no, the kind that comes from muscle memory. I didn't need my life improved by a stranger with polished shoes and people watching hallways for him. I could feel my pride stand up straight, even while my body felt weak. Accepting help like that had never stayed simple in my past. It turned into favors, expectations, careful smiles that meant you owed more than you could pay. I told myself we would find a cheaper option, even if it meant sleeping upright in the terminal. I would rather be tired than owned, I thought. Ethan didn't push back the way controlling men do. He didn't sweeten it, didn't make it sound romantic, didn't ask for gratitude. He reframed it like a logistics problem. Unused space, paid for either way. Sitting there doing nothing while a kid ate crackers like they were rationed. The offer, as I understood it, wasn't a crown placed on my head. It was waste prevention, efficiency. A spare lifeboat being lowered because it was already hanging on the side of the ship. He made it clear I could say no again tomorrow, and nothing about today would change for him. Lily listened with that serious little focus she gets when adults pretend something is complicated. She smoothed Button's worn ear, then looked from the buffet to my tired face and back, as if checking variables. Later, she explained it to me in her kid way. An apartment that no one is using plus a mom who needs rest equals the obvious answer. She didn't shame me on purpose. She just stepped over my fear and landed on practicality. And because it came from her, my refusal suddenly felt less brave and more like gambling with her safety for pride alone today. So I negotiated, because negotiation is how I keep my spine. I made it temporary in my mind first, then in the way I held my shoulders. I would use the place only during the meeting window, only until flights settled, only until I could stand on my own feet again. I would cover what I could. Utilities, groceries, anything measurable, anything that kept this from becoming a story where I paid with my freedom. I drew lines around my daughter too. No surprises. No access to us beyond what I agreed. If he wanted control, he could walk away. Ethan accepted my boundaries as if they were normal, as if a woman protecting herself wasn't an inconvenience. That was the moment my suspicion had nowhere clean to go. He took out his phone and sent a message with the same calm precision he used when he watched exits. The reply came fast, like a machine waking up. Apartment ready, access arranged, someone on his end already moving. I saw a lockbox code flash on the screen before he tilted it away, respectful even then. Power. Used quietly is still power. And it was helping us, not owning us today. Outside the lounge, I caught a glimpse of Rafe through the glass, still posted like a shadow with a job. He never stared, never smiled, just adjusted his stance when people drifted too close. Inside, Lily took one more careful trip to the buffet, this time letting herself add a banana because no one counted. I ate protein like medicine and felt my brain come back online, slower than my pride. Ethan kept choosing the chair that gave him sightlines, but he positioned Lily where she could see me. He made safety feel like architecture, built fast, then held. When I finally exhaled, it sounded like surrender. Relief came first, then shame for needing it, then gratitude so sharp it made my eyes sting. I thought about stepping into a Seattle apartment with clean sheets and groceries I didn't buy, and my stomach flipped between comfort and fear. I was wary of men, trained to look for the catch, but Ethan had accepted my terms without flinching. That mattered. It changed the shape of what was possible. I didn't know then how far the echo would travel into photos, into emails, into Lily's drawings that refused to forget him later. 6 weeks later, Seattle smelled like rain instead of jet fuel. The corporate apartment Ethan offered still didn't feel like mine, but it stopped being scary. Morning light fell across a clean kitchen, a fridge that stayed stocked, and a small table where I wrote while Lily colored beside me. I kept my rules. I paid the utilities, I logged every grocery receipt, and I treated the spare key like borrowed air. Some nights I lay awake listening to the city and wondering what kind of man could make space like this, without asking anything back. Not a thank you. Lily settled into routines the way plants lean toward a window. She learned the building's elevator chime, the doorman's nod, the safest corner of the couch for Button, her one-eyed bunny. At breakfast, she still took tiny portions, then watched my face as if waiting for permission to eat more. I hated what that said about our old life. I'd remind her, gently, that food wasn't a test here. Then I'd write for an hour, check my glucose, and rehearse my Seattle meeting in my head, trying to sound brave without sounding desperate, because second chances rarely come twice. The meeting happened on a gray Thursday afternoon, and I walked in wearing my best thrift store blazer and a smile that held on by its fingernails. I didn't get a fairy tale, but I got something real. Interest, edits requested, and a modest advance that would cover rent for a while if I kept working my shifts. When I left the building, my lungs felt bigger. I bought Lily a hot chocolate and let myself imagine a shelf with my name on it. That night I drafted chapters with a steadier pulse, and I almost forgot the airport again. It was the next Saturday when Lily made the drawing that turned into our anchor. She spread crayons across the table like treasure, tongue tucked at the corner of her mouth, and sketched 3 stick figures under a huge sun. One had long hair for Mommy, one was small for Lily, and the third was taller with broad shoulders she said belonged to Ethan. She wrote our names in careful block letters, then added Button at our feet, so nobody could be left out. I watched her and felt my throat tighten, because she drew belonging like it was possible. I kept the paper on the counter for 2 days, pretending I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. Emailing Ethan felt like stepping onto thin ice. I opened my laptop, watched the cursor blink, typed a thank you, deleted it, typed a joke, deleted that too. I didn't want to sound needy, and I didn't want to sound cold. I wanted boundaries, but I also wanted him to know that Lily remembered the man who didn't leave. In the end, I attached a photo of the drawing and wrote a careful note that said gratitude without debt. After I hit send, my stomach dropped like I'd confessed something. I told myself it was just a picture, just a small kindness returning to its source. But my hands still shook. Lily hovered nearby, pretending not to care, then asked if the message had flown yet, like the planes outside. I nodded and felt a strange ache, the kind that comes when you realize you miss a person you barely know. For the rest of the day, every notification sound made my heart twitch. I wanted his reply and I was afraid of it. Then I cared to admit. His response didn't come right away. It arrived late at night, and the first thing I noticed was how carefully he wrote, like a man used to leaving no fingerprints. He told me he had printed the drawing. I could picture his office because he later described it in fragments. Dark wood, a wall of glass looking down on the city, serious documents stacked beside a silent espresso machine. In that room, my daughter's son and stick figures looked almost ridiculous, and that was the point. He said the drawing made the people around him pause, and he didn't mind. He also addressed the question Lily had asked at the airport, the one she still circled back to when rain tapped our windows. He didn't repeat her words, but he answered the feeling underneath them. He admitted he was rarely lost in places, but often lost in choices, and that day he had followed the simplest direction: stay with the child who needed an adult. Reading that, warmth spread through my ribs, then a sting behind my eyes. He didn't praise himself. He sounded surprised by his own tenderness, as if it had been hiding from him and waking up. At the end of his message, he suggested we meet for dinner when he was next in Seattle. My first instinct was to protect the fragile calm we'd built, to keep him at the distance of gratitude. My second instinct, quieter, wondered what it would feel like to sit across from him in a restaurant, not a storm-delayed terminal. I looked at Lily asleep with button under her chin, and I felt the risk of attachment like a live wire. I told myself dinner was just food. Then my fingers hovered over the keyboard, and my heart leaned forward. By the time I said yes to dinner, my stomach had already rehearsed every worst-case ending. I braided Lily's hair at the kitchen table in Ethan's Seattle apartment, smoothing flyaways like they were worries I could press flat. She picked a pink sweater and insisted. Button deserved a napkin, too. I checked my glucose, packed tabs, then stared at myself in the mirror and tried to look like a woman going out for pasta, not a single mom stepping into a stranger's gravity. Outside, the city was damp and shining, headlights smeared on wet streets. The restaurant Ethan chose was the kind of place that made you believe in safety. An old-school Italian spot tucked between a bookstore and a florist. Warm lights in the windows, red check tablecloths, and a smell of garlic that hit you before the door even closed. Lily's eyes went wide at the bread baskets and the little paper placemats with crayons. I told myself this was normal. Families ate here. Kids giggled here. No one disappeared here. And yet, as soon as we stepped inside, I felt the air shift, like the room noticed Ethan before I did. He arrived without drama, but everything around him behaved differently. A hostess who had been brisk with the couple ahead of us softened, suddenly attentive. A server slowed near our table, then drifted away, eyes flicking toward the entrance. Ethan wore a dark coat that probably cost more than my first car, and he carried his phone like a second pulse. Two men were there too, positioned like coincidence. Rafe near the bar with a menu he never read, and another guy by the door pretending to wait for takeout. No one stared openly. They didn't have to. Space just opened. I kept Lily close, not by gripping her, but by staying within the radius of her small hand. She climbed into the booth and immediately started drawing on the placemat, making the restaurant into her own little world. I focused on bread and butter, on the clink of plates, on the soft music that sounded like it had been playing here since my childhood. Ethan sat across from us, choosing the seat that gave him a view of the front door and the hallway to the restrooms. He didn't announce it. He just did it, the way some people breathe. Part of me wanted to study him like a character I could rewrite. Another part wanted to keep my eyes on Lily's face, to make sure she felt ordinary happiness, not the echo of an airport floor. Ethan's attention moved in layers. One layer stayed with Lily, steady, patient, letting her show him her drawing without rushing her. Another layer kept counting exits, reading reflections in the glass, tracking movement in the corners. When his phone lit up, he glanced once, thumb hovering, then set it face down like he was choosing silence on purpose. My chest tightened with the thought of what he was postponing. The food arrived and, for a few minutes, I almost believed we were just three people sharing a meal. Lily tore bread into careful pieces and lined them beside Button as if her bunny needed a proper place setting. I watched her scarcity habit slip out in quiet ways, and I hated myself for every time I'd had to say not yet, not today, maybe next week. Ethan noticed too. He didn't comment. He just nudged the bread basket closer and made sure her water glass stayed full, like normal could be built out of small, consistent actions. Then the other world pressed in, gentle as a hand on the back of my neck. Rafe drifted past our booth, and even without words I felt the message in the timing, the way Ethan's shoulders tightened a fraction. A server paused near our table longer than necessary, not rude, just too aware, eyes briefly checking Ethan's face like confirmation. Ethan's gaze flicked toward the front door, then to the mirror behind the bar, then back to Lily, as if he refused to let her see the switch flip inside him. I tried to swallow my alarm, but my body remembered living on edge. I remembered doors that didn't lock right. I remembered men who smiled while taking what they wanted. I looked at Lily's drawing, at the little sun she'd colored so hard the paper thinned, and I felt the first real fear of being connected to Ethan in public. Being seen with him wasn't just awkward. It was a beacon. If he had enemies, if he had obligations, if his name carried weight in rooms I'd never enter, then my child was sitting in the shadow of that. Ethan kept his hands calm. He shifted his body slightly, putting himself between our booth and the aisle. He did it the way he'd chosen the seat earlier, like instinct pretending to be courtesy. Lily kept eating, unaware, and I wanted to freeze time right there. That was when I noticed the man outside the window, half hidden by the glass. He wasn't coming in, wasn't leaving, just lingering in the reflected glow of the neon sign like he belonged to the weather. His hands stayed in his pockets, but his posture felt wrong, too still, too focused, the way Lily once described a stranger carrying something that didn't match his body. My pulse jumped. Ethan must have seen him the same second, because the temperature at our table changed. He didn't startle. He didn't reach for anything. He simply lifted his gaze, met the reflection, and gave Rafe a nod. Normal cracked, and I knew I was about to test my boundaries. Airports used to feel like a test I was destined to fail. Now, 1 year after Denver, I walked into SeaTac with Lily's hand warm in mine and my glucose steady in my pocket. The glass walls still held the gray sky like a sheet of ice, and the announcements still bounced off the ceiling, but my chest did not lock up the way it once did. Rolling suitcases hissed past us. Coffee smelled like comfort, and I could breathe through the noise instead of fighting it. Lily skipped then twice, and I let her trusting the floor under us. A year of ordinary days had done what emergencies never could. Lily no longer scanned every doorway before she entered a room. She looked for windows now because she liked the light, not because she needed an escape. At home, she packed her school snacks without hiding them, and Button stopped living in her backpack like a shield. My writing moved the same way, slow and stubborn. I finished the revisions, met deadlines, and learned that a contract does not fix your life, it just gives you room to fix it. I counted dollars, but I slept without shaking awake. Even so, airports kept a quiet echo of fear in my bones. I carried my supplies, checked Lily's jacket zipper, and watched the crowd with a softer version of the old vigilance. We were here to meet Ethan and his daughter Ava for the first time altogether. The idea still felt unreal, like a paragraph I had not earned. Lily held a small gift bag she insisted on carrying herself. Inside was a ribbon she had chosen, bright yellow, for Ava's hair, or for her own brave bunny. She hummed a song and I let it steady my heart. I saw Ethan before Lily did, not because he was loud, but because he was still. He waited near the arrivals hallway, where the baggage carts lined up, hands relaxed, eyes working. His jacket was simple today, but his presence still made space around him like gravity. Ava stood close, a small girl with a serious face and careful posture, holding a gift bag against her chest. She looked like a child who had learned to be composed early. When Ethan's gaze found us, something in his shoulders loosened, and I felt my own breath follow right then, relief returning. Lily's fingers slipped from mine, and for a split second the old panic tried to rise. Then I saw her feet move with pure certainty, not fear. She ran to Ethan, backpack bouncing, Button's one eye peeking from the side pocket. She didn't slow to measure him. She launched herself into the space he made for her, and he caught her with a steadiness that never looked possessive. His hand rested between her shoulders like a promise and a boundary at once. Watching it, I understood that trust is built in tiny returns, not grand rescues over time showing up. Ava watched the hug like she was studying a language. Her eyes moved from Lily's face to Ethan's hand to me, calculating where she fit. Then she stepped forward, slow but brave, and held out her gift bag. Later I would learn she had picked it herself, insisting it had to be for Lily, not for adults. Inside was a tiny sweater for Button, knitted in soft gray, with a little hood. Lily's mouth fell open, and she immediately pulled the yellow ribbon from her own bag and offered it back, proud to have something to give to Ava gently. While the girls examined Button's new sweater, Ethan and I shared a look that carried the whole year. No speeches, no promises, just the quiet recognition of how many times he had shown up without demanding applause. His awareness was still there, the way his eyes checked the flow of people, the way he positioned himself so the kids were between us and a wall, but it was softer now, less like armor and more like habit shaped by love. Behind him, I noticed Rafe pretending to be a traveler, and I was grateful for safety that didn't announce itself. We moved together toward baggage claim like any other group, and that ordinariness felt miraculous. Ava took Lily's hand after a small hesitation, and Lily accepted it like it was the simplest thing in the world. Two little palms, warm and trusting, in the middle of fluorescent light and rushing strangers. Carts rattled, a baby cried, someone laughed too loud, and life kept happening around us. Yet inside our small circle, something new held. It wasn't a label or a picture-perfect plan. It was consistency. School rides, dinners, steady calls, and adults choosing to return, again and again anyway. I could see the change in Ethan in the quiet ways. Ava leaned into him, and he carried her backpack without making it a show. He stayed close, answering her needs before she had to harden into silence. A year ago, I would have assumed a man like him outsourced the soft parts of life. Now I watched him do them himself. My own life steadied too. I delivered revisions, started a new draft, and built routines that kept my glucose calmer. No instant miracle, just better days stacked together, proof that survival can turn into living for us both. At baggage claim, the girls compared Button and the tiny sweater like it was sacred. Their shoulders touched, and I felt my chest loosen. Ethan stood near me, steady, present, not crowding. His attention stayed on the kids, yet he kept tracking the room like a habit he had reshaped into care. When he looked at me, I felt a quiet question in it, and I knew I owed him an honest answer soon. Not a fairy tale, not a label, but clarity. I had spent a year learning that love can respect limits. Now I could finally speak clearly,